Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and welcome to this week's episode of In Therapy, where we follow real-life people on their therapeutic journeys. In this week's episode, we're exploring how, if we want our lives to be different, the person that has to change is us. Expecting everyone else to change is, of course, always tempting, but ultimately, that's not what's going to create the change in ourselves that we need. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, click the bell icon to be notified as new episodes are released, and do follow my Instagram at Alex Howard Therapy for daily inspiration and support. Katie came to In Therapy to work on her long-term issues with anxiety and depression. In previous sessions, we focused on self-love and setting better boundaries with those around her. It's been a longer break than usual between sessions, and Katie's been having a particularly challenging time keeping herself on track. Just a quick note before this week's episode begins. There was a longer gap between Katie's last film session and this week's episode. She went through a particularly challenging time, and I felt that having some support off camera was going to be really important in that process. And ultimately, my commitment, the team's commitment in this series, is always number one to the therapeutic journey of the participant. Being able to tell that story in this series always has to come second to that. So just so you're aware of that gap, but it'll also make more sense as we come into this week's episode.
Well, Katie, it's very nice to see you in person. It's been a while. Obviously, we've spoken on the phone a few times in the last, month or so. I'm not quite sure the best place to start. Maybe let's start with how you're doing right now. You've been in New York over Christmas. We were just touching base before we started with the cameras, but how are you doing?
I've been really, really down. As you know, I've had a big, massive emotional crash, and which has been a mixture of very deep depression, I think, and this sort of resurgence of the anxiety that I thought I'd cracked years ago. And I have been very, very anxious, mainly about the Omicron. That's what's kind of triggered it for me. But I think I just wasn't in a great state of mind, and so I've been off work for 2 months, and
you're starting your new job next week.
Yeah, on the 10th of Jan. So I've had a good time off to kind of really, but it just seems like I've spent a lot of time doing a lot of work, on myself, meditation and prayer and self-care, and nothing has shifted it. It's just, so I got to the point, I think, where, I was at as low as I could go. I had suicidal thoughts. I felt like I'd lost all hope and any kind of, actually, it's just struck me now, just sitting here now, because I am feeling much calmer today, that I've just been, ruminating about the past and how I've fucked everything up in my life, and then terrified for the future. And that's what I've been doing. So that's the depression and the anxiety.
That's the anxiety, yeah.
And I haven't actually been able, and I've been doing, I did your program again from start to finish, the reset program. And I've been putting everything into practice, but it's just, time takes time.
And you are in a very different place to when we first spoke on the phone. I guess it was beginning of December, something like that.
Yeah.
I think when you were saying that you had the suicidal ideation, I think that was that period of time. Is that right? As we look back and reflect, that was the point, I think, that was the most intense from that point of view.
Probably. And that's when the job that I was in was just so ridiculously pressured, and it all kind of just came to a head. And then, I've had the kids home for the best part of 6 weeks now, and I find that incredibly difficult. And there's still this narrative that I'm mental, I'm mad, I'm crazy. And anytime I ask them to tidy up or, to do anything, that take any responsibility, that's the rhetoric. And they're straight on the phone to their dad saying, Mum's mad, can we come and live with you? And I'm just like, go, that's fine, go and live with him, But it got to a point where I actually phoned Simon and said, let's just get back together, and it was not for me. I know that. It was just because I can't cope with the division, it's not the right decision.
But when you were together before, the division was even worse.
I know.
So is that what's happening?
No. He said no.
And what was your motivation?
Fear of being on my own. Fear of being alienated by everybody. Fear of losing my home. It's not what I want.
Because the way that I see it
but
is...
I was so low, I was believing... the narrative is, Mum's mad, Mum's irrational, Mum's behaviour is out of order. When I believe that I'm behaving like a normal parent would behave and setting boundaries. But because I've never been supported in doing that ever, the abnormal has become normal in my house. But I can't fight that. I can't fight it because I'm under attack all the time by all of them. That I've been called a narcissist, I've been called mentally ill, I need to go and see a doctor. I mean, I do all these things, that's the irony. I go and see a doctor, I go for counselling, and yet I'm the one getting up in the morning, washing myself, making my bed, keeping the house tidy, doing exercise, taking the dog for a walk, keeping everybody fed and watered. They're the ones lying in bed, leaving everything scattered everywhere, taking no responsibility. I've done all their washing this week. I feel like that's normal things, like a normal mum.
But I think the problem is that they behave in an extreme way. You have an extreme response, but then you don't follow through on the response. So the message that you're sending them is a constant push and pull. It's a boundary, and then it's a not follow through. It's a boundary, then you do the washing. So the messages don't. It's like trying to train a dog to not get on the sofa.
Do you know how difficult it is?
I don't know how difficult it is in your life. It sounds like it's incredibly difficult, but I think it's made more difficult by the fact that there's this constant inconsistency.
But I
and
am
this push and pull.
consistent until...
But you did the washing this week.
Well, no, I've not said I won't do the washing.
You see, I don't have teenage children, so I can sit here, pontificating like I know what I'm talking about. I give the caveat that I'm not in the position that you're in. What I will say, though, is on one hand, you're saying to them, this is not acceptable behavior. And in the next breath, you're then doing a bunch of things for them that they should be doing for themselves anyway.
But the thing is, I can't live in a house that's got tomato ketchup all over the sofa. And I want to live there as well. I can't do that for my mental health. That's got coats strewn everywhere and shoes and McDonald's wrappers all over the place. I can't live like that. So I've decided, and I am going to follow this through, and I am consistent. It's just when I get battered and battered and battered, not just by them, but by their father as well, and told, that I'm this, that, and the other, and I can't, sometimes I do cave in because it's exhausting.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
Absolutely exhausting. So this week I've said, that's fine, I'll tidy it up, I'll do everything, but none of you are having any money off me at all. And I will follow that through. And yes, I will be told that I'm this, that, and the other. But the problem is, I've been told for so many years that I'm these things. I've some of my core beliefs are that I'm a bad person, that I'm guilty, that all I ever wanted to do was be a good mum. That's all I ever wanted. that's the best, if that, and now it's kind of evidence is that I haven't been a good mum, or I'm being told that I haven't. That I find I can't. It's just like almost unbearable for me, and I don't think, the things that I'm accused of, and I can't see even. I'm going to lose my home. I'm going to lose my relationship with my kids. Probably I've lost my marriage. Isn't it just better the devil you know?
Well, apparently not.
So
I think there's lots of pieces here. I think one of the key pieces is what you and I spoke about on the phone, is you have to invest in you, of getting yourself back to being in a solid, grounded, stable place.
That's what I've been trying to do for 3 months, Alex.
And you have made progress. The you that I spoke to at the beginning of December was very different to the you that I spoke to you in the middle of December, which was different to you that I spoke to a week later, which is different to the you that's here. I understand it feels a long way from where you want to be, but you also have come away from where you were when you were at the emotional bottom that you were at. You've also just come through. For anyone that's got complicated or difficult family stuff, the worst time of year.
Yeah.
Because you just spend all this time together under the pressure of Christmas and New Year and going away together and pandemic happening in the background. Like, let's just also put it in the context of what's been happening.
It's just this whole idea of me being painted as this evil witch when all I've ever tried to do, everything I've ever done has come from this place of love. I know that,
But love isn't enough. Love is an important prerequisite, but in a sense, the label only sticks if you buy into it. And the problem is that you're buying into the label. And then you're trying to compensate for the label by proving that that's not the case.
My daughter told me that I was a narcissist because the PCR test when we got back, we had this whole issue about not being able to send them back. So I was very stressed. I was stressed. I'm not denying that I was stressed. I was really stressed out about it. So she just said, well, I'm just going to do my own then. And I was hurt by that because I thought I've spent 10 days trying to sort everybody out, make sure everybody's okay. And she just says, well, sod you lot, I'm just going to sort myself out. I thought that was quite selfish. I said, well, if I just decided to just sort myself out, the reality is I should have just got the 3 adult children to sort themselves out in the first place.
Yeah, I was going to say, why were you sorting them out?
Because I always have sorted everything out for everybody.
And that's a lesson. That is part of the problem.
Yes, it is.
Because what's happening is that you're taking responsibility, so nobody else is taking responsibility.
Yes.
And then
then they call me controlling.
Yeah, and you resent them.
But I'm not doing it to be controlling. I'd love it if somebody sorted it all out. I would love it.
The problem is that I think they've got to the point that there's been too many times where you've taken responsibility and someone else should have, that the gap between where they should be at their age and where they are at has got quite wide. So there's now quite a leap for them to make to be able to catch up in terms of responsibility.
And it's like the boys, they're supposed to be revising on his last chance at boarding school. He's going to be expelled if he does anything else wrong. Has got marks now when he comes back. He's not done a jot of work. He's telling me that I'm a nightmare for keep nagging him to revise. And I know I've got to just let go, but I find it so hard because I suppose it's a reflection on me as a mum if I haven't helped them to do the best they can do academically and be the best they can be. And maybe I am a narcissist.
Well, we're all narcissistic in our own ways.
But I've looked it up. I've looked up the traits, and I've said, I don't have a conflated opinion of myself. I'm quite the opposite. I I celebrate your successes. I've said this to like, I celebrate your successes for you. I don't go around going, it's because of me they've all done so well. I've never done that, you know. I've got massive empathy. I've spent hours supporting her when she's narcissists don't do that.
The problem is that there's not enough adults in your household.
No.
And you go to a place of being overly responsible, and then you go to a place of flipping and going, fuck the lot of you, and behaving in ways that then feeds the narrative that mum's crazy. That you give them enough snippets to back up the narrative, even though it's not true. How do we change the narrative? We have to change the behavior. How do we change the behavior? Well, part of it is you calming down in yourself, getting your self-care back in place, which is what you've been doing, getting yourself in a more stable, more solid place. We then have to unravel the patterns of these relationships. Yeah. The problem is that some of these relationships have got several decades of momentum, in a sense, behind them. And like, if I imagine being a kid and leaving food on the sofa, like it's unimaginable that I would think I'd get away with something like that.
But they don't get away with it. But whenever
they do, because they're still doing it.
Well, I know, but they get away with it because whatever I say, they just say I'm mad. Because when Simon was there, he'd be like, "Oh, stop bloody nagging them all the time, or stop having a go at them. They're kids." You know, he'd do it. He'd leave all his stuff on the sofa. You know, and I'd nag him. And
so they haven't learnt self-discipline.
No.
They haven't learnt to take responsibility.
No, but then I look and then I say, that's me as a failure. I failed to teach them that.
The mistake that you've made is you've taken too much responsibility, and you've had a very difficult dynamic with someone that's been undermining you and someone that's been pulling against you. And that is difficult. But also, you let that dynamic run for way too many years. Yeah. Like, it sounds like many, many years ago, there would have been a point where you would have been like, this doesn't feel right. Like, we're not on the same team.
It didn't feel right when in 2003.
Right. So the lesson here...
But I was too scared. And
right.
That's the thing. So I've got this belief, I'm too weak. I'm too weak to do this on my own.
And this is what comes back to the self-care and the working on the relationship with yourself and working on your own self-esteem to go, actually, I do not deserve to be treated like this.
But you see, that's the problem, Alex, is that I go to a place where I say, yeah, I do deserve it. I'm a piece of shit. I do deserve it. I do deserve them to all there must be something really bad about me. Because that's what everybody in my life has told me. Well, from my parents, you know, when I was growing up, so they can't all be wrong.
Well, what happens is we get told a certain narrative, and then we attract the people into our lives that reinforce the narrative.
I know.
It doesn't mean it's actually true.
And the thing is, with my friendships, none of them would say that.
Right.
Not one. All my people I work with.
See, what I think is particularly interesting here is that there's a place in you that feels very trapped in all of this that's going on. But there's another place in you which has enough self-reflective capacity, enough intelligence, enough kind of wisdom to look at it through the eyes, for example, of your friends, to look at it from perhaps my eyes or outside eyes and see through all of this. And it's a sort of, I think it's an interesting place where you get sucked in and it all feels true. And then you manage to get out and look back and go, this is crazy making, but it's not actually true.
Well, I don't ever say it's not actually true, because the truth at the bottom line is I don't know whether it's true or not.
But not knowing is enough.
He said to me, well, a narcissist wouldn't know they were a narcissist because they would never admit to any of those things, would they? So, I mean, it's all these head games, you know. I said to her, well, I've spoken to people about narcissism and whether I'm a narcissist, and I've been told that narcissists don't question whether they're narcissists.
Well, that's true. And also what you're describing on her side is gaslighting. is making you question your own perspective of reality in a way that's convenient for her.
And they have succeeded in doing that so well. I do question my own. I do. I know what I think. I know what I believe deep down, but I question it all the time because surely it can't be. I mean, I have said till I'm blue in the face, please don't leave the rappers. Please don't leave the place looking. They're all up till 3, 4 in the morning, playing their games and doing what they do and lazing around and drinking and I've gone to bed, at 10:30, 11 o'clock. Please don't leave the place in a mess. Every single day.
But ultimately, of course it's challenging when you've got teenagers and they're individuating and figuring out their identity, and part of how they do that is they push against family, and that's how they go, I'm this and you're that. And that's all part of psychological development. But also, we teach people how to treat us. And you've taught them, and Simon's taught them, to behave in certain ways.
Yeah.
And what you're describing, much of what you're describing, I think is just unacceptable.
Well, so do I. But I've been undermined constantly the whole time. Any kind of boundary or discipline or line that I've tried to draw, I've been told that I'm mad, that I'm crazy, that I'm unreasonable.
And you've believed it. And when you believe it, what then happens?
Well, I get upset. And
then what happens?
And then I suppose I lose the plot.
Well, you get gaslit. And what gaslighting means is you get calls to question your own perspective and your own reality.
And then I give in.
And then you acquiesce and you give in, and they get what they want. So what they've learnt is, if mum puts a boundary down, we just have to gaslight her and tell her that she's mad, and in the end she'll give in and we won't have to change.
And then what said to me yesterday, he said, are you going to give me the car keys then? Like this kind of entitlement.
Yeah, because
and
that's
I said,
that's
no,
in the
not.
past.
I've thought
they know
about
that if they push you hard enough and they bully you enough and they tell you you're mad enough, in the end, they're going to get what they want.
Well, I said no. I said, I've decided you are banned from the car for a week. So I've said a week initially for doing that. And he said, he looked at me. And also he's decided that he's having the car at college. I said, no, you're not having the car at college. You're not just driving to college and having it all week. And no, I'm not. I couldn't cope with that from my anxiety point of view anyway, because I don't trust you as, that you're sensible enough. And also, you haven't got the money to pay for the parking. Well, you can pay for the parking. I said, I'm not paying for the parking.
But also, just back up a bit further.
Do you know what? I just want to say what he said. He said to me, did you not realise when you had kids the financial commitment you'd have to make? To me. And I went, the financial commitment? I said, I bought that car for you out of the goodness of my heart. That's a bonus. He goes, everybody's parents buy them a car. I said, they damn well do not. I said, and my financial commitment was to give you a roof over your head and to feed you till you're 18. You're 18 now. My financial commitment's finished. I'm doing this as a bonus.
Because the problem with privilege is people don't realise they have it.
I know.
And the more that you give children a privileged environment that they don't appreciate, the more you train them not to appreciate it.
I know.
And some of the things that you're describing in terms of how you're being spoken to worry me.
Yeah.
Because they worry me in terms of the values that they're developing and what they think is acceptable behaviour, which is in danger of coming through in their relationships as they go.
Totally.
But that's how you treat a woman, or that's how you treat mum.
But Simon's never, he taught them those things.
Yeah, he did.
Because he's never had boundaries in his life. His parents, I don't know what's happened, what the conversations are up there, and I shouldn't suppose, that I know, but he will, in their eyes, he can do no wrong. The narrative will be that he told me on the phone that his friends had told him he'd put up with me for far too long, So he's been given this idea that he's not done anything wrong. He's not got issues. He was the victim for 20 years.
And that's the story that he's also selling the children.
Yeah.
They're the victims.
Yeah.
But that narrative only sticks if you let it stick. Because in a sense, you're all complicit in a sense in this kind of shared narrative within the family that mum's, because on one hand, mum's the responsible one that holds everything together. So deep down, everyone sort of knows that you're the one that gets shit done.
Yeah.
But also, if mum gets shit done, we don't have to do it. But sometimes we have to just manipulate her and coerce her and bully her. And the way we do that is we tell her that she's mad, we tell dad that she's mad, and we complain about it, and then we get what they want. And they're just becoming little Simons by the sound of it. And you're trying to compensate for that, and you're trying to protect them and take care of them, whilst also trying to live in a harmonious, tidy, organized house with a bunch of feral children, basically. And you can't, what you're doing at the moment isn't ultimately working.
I think what I've done all their lives is I've wanted to give them what I didn't have.
Yeah. You've wanted to give them...
I mean, I had holidays galore, but I didn't have that emotional connection, with my parents that I was so desperate for. And I have got that more now than I've ever had with my parents, much more. And I think I just wanted, I know exactly what you're saying, but it's so much easier said than done.
I get it. That's why sitting in this chair is the easy chair. I get it, but it's still true.
And if I say no, they'll come in, they'll start going through my pockets, through my drawers, through my...
It's completely unacceptable. I mean, it's abusive behaviour.
Yeah, but I'm the one who's told I'm big.
Yeah, no, I get it. You have to find the way to start reintroducing healthy boundaries and hold them.
Well, yeah, but how? I've tried for years and years. And Simon would just sit there, when he was there. Just give them their phone back. For God's sake, why do you have to always punish them? That's what he says.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be doing their laundry, any of them. I wouldn't be cooking the meals. I wouldn't be giving them money. I wouldldn't be...
I'm not going to give them money. That's it now.
But
I've got to give the girls money to live in university, haven't I? I can't cut them off.
Well, yeah, you work out what an appropriate amount is, and they have to learn to budget. When I was at university, when I ran out of money, I ran out of money.
Yeah, the same.
But that was really important because that meant when I started in my career that I actually learned how to manage money. But you don't know how to manage money if someone just keeps bailing you out because zero's not zero. Zero just means phone mum for more.
I know.
It's a very difficult situation to unravel. But if you don't unravel it, you're just going to live in this constant dynamic. Yeah. And it's going to be worse in the short term in some ways because you're going to put the boundary up and they're just going to try and tear it down. But you do have plenty of power in these relationships. But it's not weaponizing that power. It's not using that power to punish them or to to kind of get back at them because you're frustrated. It's being clear around they need to learn respect. They need to learn self-discipline. They need to get some self-worth by the sounds of it. And right now you're colluding with them going round and round in circles in the way that they are. So based on what we're saying so far, what do you think you could start to do differently in a sustainable way? I don't mean in a kind of, reactive way, but what do you think are some of the things you need to start to change?
Well, I know the things, but I just don't think I'd be, I'll say I'm not going to give them pocket money anymore because they've not shown me the respect. But then today, I took the Christmas tree down this morning and I'd said to her I was really disappointed about the state of the house this morning and I've tidied it. And I said, but you're not having any money. And then she said, I'm really sorry, Mum, I haven't helped you around the house. I'll do anything you want me to do today. So she then, she was sweeping up all the Christmas tree needles and she was doing it. So she goes, I did help you. You can't not give me pocket money now. So they'll do it when I get upset. And then I'll give them their pocket money because they've done it. What do I say?
Well, I think what you would do, what should have happened when they were younger is written out ground rules of what to expect. Okay,
they'd rip them up in front of me and Simon would. Bloody rules. Why have you got rules on the wall? Why have you got a ladder chart? if you do this, if you empty the dishwasher, you'll get a star. And I tried everything. And that's why I feel so resentful, because he undermined me, and I feel like I'm being blamed now for having these kids that have got no boundaries or no respect.
Well, it's not about blame, because blame is like, it's your, you did the best you could at the time with the understanding that you had. And now you're reflecting and you're looking back and you're going, we're in a mess. How did we get here?
But we've been in a mess for 20 years, and I feel like part of me thinks, actually, I'm not the one who's got the problems here. Well, I could have brought these kids up. I probably wouldn't have ended up in all the therapy that I've been ending up in if it hadn't been for all this dysfunction.
So why do you think you stayed
in the marriage? Because I know why I stayed. Because I always wanted this loving, nurturing, cherishing family at the heart, and because I wanted the ideal, like you've told me before.
So you valued how it looked over how it was.
Well, there were moments of there were, and there was some happiness,
Sure, but what you're describing,
I didn't value how it looked. I've never valued how it looked.
Let me
rephrase
it slightly differently.
How they've got this perfect family. I've never done that. I mean, I tell everybody how shit it is.
Let me put it slightly differently. You valued the dream of what you wanted it to be over the fact of how it was.
Yeah. And I kept striving and thinking it would work and it would be the dream.
And there's a part of you that's still hanging on to that even now.
Yeah, there is. The log fire and the warmth and the music and the happiness and the laughter and the love. That's all I've ever wanted. And I've tried so hard to make that.
The problem is, by valuing the dream over the reality, is you consistently let things slide because you didn't want to lose the dream that you shouldn't have let slide.
I know.
The first time that Simon undermined you and you weren't working as a functional parenting team, something would have felt off inside of you.
Yeah, it did.
But because you wanted to hang on to the dream so much, you would have swept that under the carpet to keep the dream alive.
And now I'm 50 and fat and ugly and nobody will want me anyway and I'll be on my own for the rest of my life. So that's...
Well, I'm not sure who's told you that story, but that's the story.
He told me yesterday.
Right, so he's told you that story. It doesn't make it true, but he's told you that story. And that's also part of manipulation. That's part of what... Because also what happens in situations like this is you've had your self-esteem undermined to make you feel that you have to stay. What's different now is Simon's not in the house anymore.
No.
They are adults, and you do have power that you may not realize that you have. But it's how to use that power in a skillful and a constructive way.
Yeah, but that's what I don't know how to do.
So that's part of the learning curve that needs to happen.
Yeah.
It's also recognizing that the fact that you stayed in such a toxic marriage for so many years and that you then went back to a toxic marriage and you thought about going back to it again.
Well, it's like the Stockholm syndrome, isn't it? It is.
That's part of the unhealed and unresolved trauma in you.
Yeah.
Which
and I know
which as that heals and you start to see this with all the more clarity, that's part of what gives you the boundary to go, that's unacceptable, that's unacceptable. But I think the key part at the moment is really doubling down on your work on yourself and create, if the kids are going to go off and do their thing, you will have more peace and quiet in the coming weeks.
But the anxiety of going back to school and messing up that, and I've like fast forwarded that and thought, what am I going to do if he gets kicked out of school?
Well, I think he has to go live with his dad. If that's the threat that everyone's using, then that's what happens.
Oh, but you can't, because he's in the back bedroom at Nana and Granddad's, and you're living in the family home. And how selfish are you?
Well,
because you've got this big home.
Then someone needs to pay towards it.
pay towards.
Well, Simon, if Simon wants his children to live in the house, he should be contributing.
I know. And he won't.
That's how he might say he's not going to, but that's legally how it works. If he's got children, he's financially responsible for them.
Well, he's saying he's paying for the kids. He's paying for the kids at university. He's not paying anything towards the school fees. He's paying towards accommodation, but he's not paying anything towards the house because he doesn't live in it. That's what he says. Yeah,
but the children still live in the house. It's still the family home. And that's how the courts would look at it.
I don't know if they would.
Well, they would. If there are dependents, they need to have a home that they can live in. Just because they're away at school or whatever doesn't change the fact that he has a responsibility towards that.
Yeah, but he says he wants to sell the house so that he can buy a house that they can live in. You know, and he's got an answer for everything.
Yeah, and maybe that is what needs to happen. Because right now he's weaponizing the fact. You know, it's like a divorce is not just the ending of a love relationship. It's also having separation in those ways as well.
I know.
You know, and hanging on to the home is in danger of being the same pattern of hanging on to the dream of how you want it to be, as opposed to facing the reality. And living in a house that you can't afford is just not fun. You just spend the whole time. It's not a dream, it's a nightmare because you're spending the whole time stressed about it. Your responsibility is with the understanding and the insight that you have at this point to make a different set of choices going forwards.
Yeah. But I'm so low and so beaten down. So
and that's why
I don't know how I'm ever going to get out of this.
You don't have to figure all that. Right now, we're making sense of what's happening, but you don't need to fix all of this right now. Your job right now is self-care. It's your meditation. It's your going through the programs. It's taking time for yourself. And it's making sure as you start the new job next week, you don't overpromise, you keep your boundaries in place, you don't become overly responsible for everything, that you make sure you set that up in a carefully measured way. As you then get a bit stronger in yourself and you start to get the financial divorce settled and resolved, that will give you clarity.
Then I'll get kicked out of school and I'll get a call from him saying he's not doing what he's meant to be doing, and then it all piles on me, and then I'm like, I can't cope with this anymore.
Yeah, so you do the best you can. We can't avoid some of those things potentially happening. What we can do is work on building up you so you're more resourceful and more resilient to deal with those things.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. And it's not a kind of, there's no easy solution at this point in time, but there are a lot of solutions. And those solutions need time and they need patience. And where attention goes, energy flows. If you put your attention on caring for yourself, building yourself up, and yes, a bunch of these things are happening and you get thrown off course, but then you bring yourself back on course. But your true north right now is Project Katie.
Yeah.
Taking care of it.
But when I get to this point where I'm so anxious and I can't think straight, I can't even get out of my bed and have a shower. You know, I get to that point. But
that's the consequence of look at what's happened over the last few months.
Yeah.
The kids are now going off. That's going to give you more space. Getting into the new job will give you, having 2 months away from work is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
It's a blessing because you have space, but actually you've got more time to get yourself worked up. Actually having a focus each day with work, as long as you don't overcommit, can actually be quite a calming thing as well, because you've got something, like you were saying, you're right, depression is too much focus in the past, anxiety is too much focus in the future.
And I did make a decision. I was going for 2 jobs and I went for the one.
Yeah, I'm glad, and we spoke about that on the phone. I'm glad you made that choice. And the antidote right now is being in the present. But how do you get in the present? You have a present that takes your attention, like you've got a job and you've got to focus on it. And you practice your meditation, you take care of yourself, and there's work to do here in terms of the history and the trauma and unraveling all of this.
But is it ever going to be over?
It's not. It doesn't need to be over. You need to be over it. We can't change the history. We're not going to be able to radically fix the stuff with the kids. They're going to be a nightmare for a while. That's just how it's going to be. And life has a great way of shaping people.
Are there other families going through this? You know,
you're the only family in the world, Katie, that's got children that are a nightmare.
Well, that's how it feels.
Most families have their problems. In fact, the families
as dysfunctional and as toxic as mine.
Sure. The families that have the most toxic problems are the ones that have the image of having no problems, as we've explored here.
Yeah.
The more we try to hang on to the idealized dream, the more we don't deal with what's really going on. And when you don't deal with it, it just gets worse and worse.
But that's the whole point. I've tried to deal with it and I've not been able to. I've not been allowed to. I haven't.
Well, it's not also, we're focusing on all the problems right now.
Yeah.
It isn't all bad.
No.
There are also lots of wonderful things in your family.
There are. We
We
went for brunch on the last day in New York and they all said, we'd like to pay for this, Mum, to thank you. You know, things like that.
Yeah.
They have got good values.
Of course.
They have got good...
We're focused on the problems.
He wasn't very keen on playing, but...
We're focused on the problems because we're trying to make things better.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's only problems.
No. It doesn't. And they are good kids in lots of respects. They're just really spoiled.
Yeah, they're emotionally spoiled and they're practically spoiled. And we can't change their father, but we can change things for you. With the new job, I want you to make me a promise.
Yeah.
You're going to make sure that you carve time out for your mental and emotional health.
Yeah.
So that means having a conversation on day one of making sure you're going to be able to leave early for us to have our appointments, the other things that you need. Because if you don't set things up in that way, it's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. No, I will.
Katie, it's great to see you. Hang in there. You can do this.
Yep.
Go gently. Focus on you. Project Katie.
Yeah.
Keep building up. You've come a long way from where you were a month ago. Keep building up. And then from that place of being more resourceful, we then will start to attack these other issues.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope you found this week's episode of In Therapy helpful. It's such a brave process that these participants go through. And I have deep respect for Katie for committing to and staying with the journey that she's on. It takes courage to change. And ultimately, we have to commit to ourselves. We have to make our healing journey, if not the most important thing in our lives, one of the most important things in our lives. And that's where really with Katie, we came to Project Katie, that there has to be that true showing up to the journey. Beyond the practical benefits of the committing of time and energy to our healing path, it's also a true act of self-love. It's saying, I matter enough to commit to myself and show up to my healing journey. So I'm curious for you, what does Project You look like? What's the first step you could take, perhaps inspired by this week's episode, to commit to your own healing? Where can you begin? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. We've had a little break for the last few weeks between sessions, but we're going to be back again next week. I look forward to talking with you on next week's In Therapy.